Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back to another video. Today is the first episode of the weekly updates series where I will update you on everything you need to know with Monster Jam. Now, this series will not go in depth on every indie show that happened everywhere. This is really the focus on Monster Jam, and I do just want to get some stuff done here. So this is episode 1. This is the introduction episode. So let me move over here. So this is the first episode. So first, before we get anywhere with this, I would like to go over basically what we are looking at here for the series. So this series will be coming out weekly, assuming I can do it that week. Obviously, there are some weeks where I won't be available, Tuesday or Wednesday to do one, but if I am, that's when this series will come out. Now, this series is going to basically cover everything you need to know. It's going to recap past points for Monster Jam. We're going to look at my future schedule. We're going to look at what happened in the past for my channel. Look at what I'm planning for the channel. We're going to look at BeamNG as a specific section because I know that is really what I want to lock down and do. Every episode will have a driver focus because obviously it will make the episodes a little bit better to have that driver focus. So for today's driver focus, we will be having Ryan Anderson, and so basically driver focus, we're just going to review first the 2022 season or the most recent season for that driver, and then we're going to look back at the history for that driver, and then finally we will end off with a discussion board, which essentially will just end up being your typical like Q&A kind of thing. That's where the streams will end off as. So yeah, this is really going to just be the way for you guys to know everything you need to know about past Monster Jam events, future Monster Jam events, my plans, my past videos, my BeamNGs. If you want to learn about specific drivers, if you want to learn a bit more about me, anything like that, that is what this series is for. So we do have, each episode should have somewhere between 5 to 8 or 9 different topics that will be covered. So this is just the introductory. If you don't know me, I've done YouTube for about 5 years, and coming into this channel, I believe I started this channel at the end of 2020, so this channel has been going for around 2 years now, which it is a little bit longer than it sounds. I mean, at first it doesn't seem like it would be, but you look back at what I was doing with those streams where I would just play Aces League hours on end in Roblox making videos, and that, you look at that and then you look at kind of my channel position now, and you could really see kind of where this channel has gone, and I definitely think this channel will be a full-time channel. I'm going to do this channel as long as I do YouTube, and I think that I will be here for quite a long time making videos. So yeah, first thing we need to cover is weekend recap. So, as well as covering Monster Jam things for the weekend, of course, I am a Monster Jam channel, so I will also be covering what happened to me, not necessarily last weekend, but last week. So last week, we would see the wrapping up of the 2012 tour. We would see the second half of the runs come out, and it would result in, I believe Lindsay Wink, Lucas Oil Crusader, would win freestyle, but lose by 2 points for the overall, and that means Neil Elliott had won all the 2012 tour, and it was all his. Then we went to the point results, which were just talked about, and then we wrapped up last week with the Stadium Rising Star of the Year award nominees. Now, this week, I currently don't have anything planned for the award series because I think that is something I'm going to focus a lot more on as we get to the end of the year more so, because right now there are still plenty of events to happen, so I can't really make anything like freestyle of the year, show of the year. All that stuff can't happen until we actually get to that point in time. So I'm gonna try to put out a couple videos of that series, but it's not gonna be, back to back to back to back to back every week. This early on, it doesn't sound early on it, but there are still 3 months left. And I believe Monster Jam is going up to December this year. I think they actually do have a show in December. Yeah, Spokane. They're gonna be in there for the last show of the year. So we do have all the way until December for arenas. Stadium-wise, we'll be able to start that in November. But also November is a big deal. We have a lot of the driver announcements to happen then. So that's what our recap's looking like here. Now we're going to go in the Monster Jam recap. So past weekend, Monster Jam went out to Rosemont, Illinois in the Allstate Arena. So we're going to start with show 1 on Friday. Show 1 would see Armando Castro win racing and skills, which did get him quite a solid amount of points for the night. But we would see Tristan England win freestyle. And with them already having good success in racing with getting the semifinals and freestyle, which he won, as well as skills, which he got second, it was enough for Tristan England to take home the overall and the freestyle championship despite Armando Castro winning skills and racing. Then we move into show 2, which is Saturday afternoon. There we would see racing won by John Zimmer Jr., so he's getting his name up there a little bit. But Armando Castro would be back for some more as he would win skills challenge again. However, it would be a very varied success night because we would then see Kristen Anderson win freestyle, and ultimately it would result in Kristen Anderson winning the overall despite only winning one event and somehow still ending up with the same amount of points as Tristan England had got the earlier night. And then we move into Saturday night, show 3. Show 3 would see Tristan England win racing and skills, which did get him quite a solid amount of points. Closely behind him, though, in skills, we would see Armando Castro in second, and Armando Castro would be your winner for freestyle with Tristan England in second. And after all of that, it would be enough for Tristan England to win your Saturday evening show. And then we move into show number 4, the Sunday afternoon show. That would be quite a show with some battles between a couple drivers. Again, we would see Armando Castro beat Zach Garner in the finals and win racing, but skills would go to Tristan England. And then finally, freestyle would be another win for Armando Castro. And finally, after winning so many events the weekend, Armando Castro would go home with an overall event championship Sunday afternoon. And then we look at show 5, where we would see John Zimmer Jr. win racing. We would see him get third in skills, but the winner would be Tristan England. And we would see him get second in freestyle with Armando Castro being the winner. Now, the thing with this is we saw some pretty consistent success for John Zimmer Jr., but a lot of the other drivers were all over the board, and it would be enough for John Zimmer Jr. to go home with the overall win at show 5, driving terminal velocity. So that is your weekend recap right there for your past weekend. So that is everything you need to know about what just happened with Monster Jam. Now it's time to look to the future. Here we will be going for the BeamNG schedules because I think originally I would have it swapped with future schedule, but I think BeamNG schedules are going to play into that anyway, so I will get them out of the way first. So with BeamNG schedules, currently I don't have many super specific event planned, but I do know for a fact next month I will be making a Boneyard Bash Truck Killer Freestyle, and sometime in December there will be a Christmas Crushers kind of freestyle event, and both those being mentioned, I do want to get a New Year's event in there as well, which I did try to do a couple of years ago, but it did not end up happening. So I want to try and get that done this year, so that would be 3. That is an event planned for October, December, and January. that are all pretty big events. Apart from that, it will probably just stick to smaller indie shows and maybe a couple slightly bigger Monster Jam shows that will be released in multiple parts. That being added, I do have a bunch of old All-Star Challenge videos that I am considering bringing those in and finishing that project and getting that out. I'm not 100% sure if that will happen, but I want to try to get that to happen. Again, I'm just not 100% sure if it will. So we are looking at a few big events. Apart from that, there will mostly be probably some Monster Truck Throwdown, Toughest Monster Truck Tour, maybe some All-Star Monster Truck Tour, and then apart from that, it would really just be probably some custom-made tours and some custom-made shows, some custom-made lineups. No real show replications, I don't think, will happen for quite a while. So that's what BeamNG is looking like. I might get a little bit more BeamNG going in November when we actually know what next year's lineups will be, because once we know that much, I will probably want to start making freestyle videos with the lineups, because that has been something I like doing in the past, and I think I will stick to that for the future. So I do want to start doing some events like that, but I won't soon, because at the moment we only know a percent of each tour. So that is what BeamNG scheduling is looking like. I'm not sure if I'll have anything out this month, but I will try and see if I can. As well as that, though, we're about to get into the future schedule, where I will mention quite a bit more stuff that you should need to know about why BeamNG might not be coming out as much as before. So we move into the upcoming schedule, and this is a topic I'm actually quite excited to talk about, because I have a lot of things planned for the future, and Monster Jam has some big events planned for the future. So what am I looking at for the future, for you guys, for content? That is what I want to get out of the way first. So essentially, what is to be said there? Going forward, I have a lot of things planned. Going into the first weekend, actually this weekend of excitement, I will be headed out to the Arizona State Fair because the All-American Monster Truck Tour will be opening up the fair. So we are going to go to all 3 Saturday shows, assuming that will work with time and scheduling. And then on top of that, we are trying to look into going to both of the Sunday shows. So a 5-show weekend, I've never had anything near that big, and I've never gone to a last show, like, a multi-show weekend. So I do want to see kind of how crazy they might go Sunday night. So I am definitely looking forward to this weekend, but we have to look past only this weekend, because I also have a lot to say about next weekend, October 1st, and this is the Monster Jam channel. So that being said, it would be assumed greatly that I will be seeing a Monster Jam event. Monster Jam heads back to State Farm Stadium here in Glendale this October, and I am going to be there. I am very excited, because this might not be the greatest lineup we've seen, but it's looking like it's going to be the most unique lineup of the year. And it kind of always happens, because our show's always been that kind of testing show. They test out new lineups, and most importantly, they test out new tracks, which is something completely new to be looking forward to, and something I am definitely very, very excited for. So when saying that, the lineup for Glendale will consist of Team Throttle Monster having Mike Christensen and Vendetta, Paul Jensen and Velociraptor, and a to-be-announced Rockwell Red Driver. We would also see David Wolfer and Jurassic Attack. And then for the other indies, which I'm super excited to be saying, Team Overboard will be returning after 3 years, not being here since the beginning of 2019. So about January of 2019 was the last time they were here. So I am very excited to see Team Overboard back. We have Jamie Garner and the Monster Jam legend Cole Bernard with the Black Pearl. I have seen him once. It was a long time ago, And at the time, he was still growing as a driver. He has kind of hit his peak this year. I think he's been doing really well, especially looking at the Nashville freestyle. So I think taking all that into consideration, I'm very excited to see what he'll be able to do here. So that wraps up your Indy lineup. Now it's time to get to the Fel drivers, which are even more interesting for my shows, because first we will see Lindsey Reed drive Monster Mode Dalmatian and return to the circuit. That's not too crazy. I mean, we see driver returns in postseason and then they run the next season. That's not too rare to happen, but it is the first lineup this year where she will be running, so I would still consider it to be a little bit unique to see. Then we see two other drivers who I think they're well known. They're never really considered, the best of the best drivers, but they're always on that top 10 list for the drivers, which are Todd LeDuc and Bryce Kenny. I used to consider them kind of the SUV truck drivers, but now Todd LeDuc moved into Blue Thunder, and I'm assuming a Marvel truck next year. So now I'm just going to consider them, there's some of the best drivers. They're always put on that top 10s list, but they're not ever quite considered to be, the number one driver, but they're always going to go down and throw it down no matter what show they're at. And yeah, it's a very exciting thing to see them coming back, especially Todd LeDuc, who is of course the hometown driver here. Then we move into the three big names: Gravedigger, El Toro Loco, and Son of a Digger. I would say they have to be the three biggest names of my show. So, when you look at those names, you would expect something like Adam Anderson, Mark Liss, and Ryan Anderson. And although two of those out of three are correct, there is one that's not. So we will be seeing Adam Anderson driving Gravedigger, which is super exciting because he has not been here since May of last year. That is about 2 or 3 shows absent from the stadium, so I'm very excited to see him return. Let's just hope that it's not a last-minute driver change like it was last October. We see Mark Liss and El Toro Loco, which I am actually very, very excited to see, because coming into this year, everyone kind of expected him to be like first stadium tour driver, okay performance, that kind of thing. And that same thing could have been said for like Caleb Ludd, and both of them really proved to be really good drivers. But I think that especially is true for Mark Liss with El Toro Loco, because he came into the season, I would say, stronger than he is now, but at the same time, that's when points really had to be determined. And so once you realize that the points, despite having the best of the best moves, somehow were not enough to get the lead, he did start to slow down a little bit, but it didn't stop him from getting backflips, halfway through the run, so he can go hard the rest of the run, and that resulted in crazy crashes and crazy saves for El Toro Loco. So I'm very, very excited to see Mark Liss come back. Same kind of story for Team Overboard, except I have seen them before. And then the last driver that I am making mention of for my show is because he is by far the most unique driver to be seen at my show, and that is, based on what Monster Jam announced a little bit back, Weston Anderson will be driving Son of a Digger instead of Ryan Anderson, who has been rumored to be doing some work in Australia when they head there for their international tour. And that is where this lineup is really set apart from all the other shows we've seen this year, because with the other shows we've seen this year, it's just been a bunch of normal drivers tossed around. But we have Weston Anderson. He won his rookie year. He's performed in stadiums twice, if you would consider Salinas a stadium, and then of course at the World Finals, where he did a very good run. So I'm very interested to see what he'll do coming into Glendale for a couple of reasons. Will he go back for that container backflip? Will he land a backflip by maybe going for a mini flip? Will he continue the air that we saw at World Finals, or was that just for the World Finals and he'll tone it down a little bit more for a postseason show? A lot of things that you really have to try and take into consideration when talking about Weston Anderson entering a stadium setting. What can we really expect to see? Because I have no idea. Realistically, when you look at some of his other performances this year, he could easily wipe the whole event. But again, you never know, because we've never seen him have a basic stadium performance. We saw Salinas, which was a pretty basic track that was set. It was basically just an arena track in a stadium, in an actual stadium. And I don't really like to count that as a stadium show because that would be like the same as, Tacoma. Although a lot of people like to consider Tacoma a stadium stop, which I do too, when they're giving it an arena setup, you can't really call it a stadium stop. So this, apart from World Finals, would be Weston's first stadium stop. And obviously, every driver drives a lot differently at the World Finals than they would do in an everyday event. So I'm very, very interested to see how that will play out with Weston Anderson behind the wheel of Son of a Digger in a stadium, because I think that is going to be one of the most interesting things that we will see from Monster Jam this year, and it's definitely a worthwhile driver change. I know it's not. I know he's not going to be as good as Ryan Anderson is at every show, but it does give him good stadium opportunity because, as we can see, he hasn't done in arenas next year, and this does give him a chance to show what he can do in stadiums. So we're going to have to see if he will take that chance or drive a little bit more conservative, like what we saw from Armando Castro last year when he went to Glendale. And when you look at it that way, Brandon Vincent, although just coming out to Glendale last year, he still put down a really good run despite being considered an arena driver. So same thing could be expected to be seen from Weston Anderson if he does want to take his shot at getting into a stadium. Now when we look at that, we see quite a few events happening, like Australian events. We see events in Arlington, Houston, Orlando. We see some events in, I believe, Puerto Rico, and some in Europe. But I don't have time. I don't really think I'm going to go over every single upcoming, international show that's coming. And same goes for really the shows here. So I want to lock down on what I think has a very, very, very good potential at being show of the year. And that is Houston coming this October 22nd. I think Houston has the greatest chance this October to prove itself as the greatest stadium stop this year. This is like the 8th show in Houston or something this year. And so far, it has, been a pretty average year for Houston. Although we did see some great runs, nothing that was like completely never seen in an average show. I mean, air saves, not big saves. The only thing that was really standout for Houston would have been when you see Charlie Hawkins, he over-rotates a backflip, saves it. That's really the only very unique thing Houston saw. But when you look at this October Houston's lineup, it really sets apart from the earlier shows. So let's go over the lineup. We have Adam Anderson, Ryan Anderson, Mark List, Lindsey Reed, Bryce Kenny, Todd LeDuc, who will be driving Rod Ryan, Mike Christensen, Paul Jensen, Brandon Budd, John Gordon, Jim Kohler, and Corey Rummel. So really reading off those names, and you could say, maybe a different show is a little bit better. I think this is the most stacked lineup. The only thing that would probably change the lineup would be, maybe Tom Ensign instead of Lindsey Reed, who is just coming back to Monster Jam. But when you look at the lineup, apart from maybe that, it's by far the best lineup we're seeing this year. We're seeing some veteran drivers like Adam Anderson and Jim Kohler. We're seeing some of the top indies like Corey Rummel and Jim Kohler. We're seeing some of the greatest drivers of 2022 like Mark List, Ryan Anderson, Adam Anderson, Corey Rummel. We're seeing some, smaller indie drivers who have given themselves bigger names this year, most notably Team Throttle Monster. We're seeing Brandon Budd and Wasted Nights, who had great rising earlier this year when you look at his shows, and he's been landing backflips this year, which is a completely new step for him. We see Lindsey Reed returning, which could mean, lower performance, but it could mean a pretty good show. On the other hand, we look at Bryce Kenny with Mohawk Warrior. Again, like said, same thing goes for him and Todd LeDuc. Some of the drivers that they're always on that top 10 list, they're never going to be, at the moment, they're not considered the #1 driver, but they're definitely always going to be on that top 10 drivers, and they've shown some pretty good skill, especially looking at this year for both of them, battling it out on Stadium Tour Red. So that is overall what this lineup is looking like. Not to forget John Gordon with Bad Company, who has had a pretty good rise this year as well. We did see him do, I believe, his first World Finals performance. So that is really what I have to talk about for upcoming plans and events here. Now we move into the next topic, which is our driver focus. So for this week, your driver focus or driver review is going to be Ryan Anderson. And Ryan Anderson, we see his career begin, a long time ago. But before we go all the way back there and start talking about that, I do want to talk about his 2022 season, because he has had quite this season this year. This has been a great year for him, as he took home his third world championship, and he would win his tour. So it starts at the beginning of the year, and Ryan Anderson is basically in a three-way battle between himself, Tyler Menninga, and Camden Murphy, but most notably, it's really a Ryan Anderson versus Tyler Menninga battle. And we do see for a few weeks, Tyler Menninga is holding the overall lead, and Ryan Anderson, event after event, is really battling for that. And I think Anaheim is really where the tables had turned, and Ryan Anderson got that chance to catch back up. Because going into Anaheim and also a little bit of Houston and my show, we would see Ryan Anderson start to pick up more wins, and Tyler Menninga would have a few skills mess-ups, a few truck breakages, a few early-ended runs, and just despite having good moments, not getting wins and not getting good enough scores to win. So Tyler Menninga is still going hard, but struggling a lot more than before, while Ryan Anderson has been pretty consistent the whole season and might even be growing now with some of the best air and best saves, especially when you look at East Rutherford, that we have seen this year. And once Ryan Anderson really was able to establish his ground against Tyler Menninga, that's when he really started to pick it up a lot more, because he knew that he was now definitely a lot more in the runnings to get the overall championship than before. And from there, Tyler Menninga had a couple catch-ups, but never actually got back over Ryan Anderson, and Ryan Anderson would carry that out going up until, I believe, Atlanta and a couple other shows similar, and that would end up being his victory and ultimately crowning him your Stadium Tour Yellow Champion. But it wouldn't stop there for Ryan Anderson's year, because we also have to look at what's happening at the World Finals. The World Finals comes up, and it's a mess. So we're seeing some crazy rain, crazy storms, and crazy problems. So you look at that, and yeah, it's a completely new story. So it racing happens, and Ryan Anderson is on a great streak. It's a muddy mess, and Ryan Anderson is there in the finals. There's whatever tornado sirens going off everywhere, but Ryan Anderson and Brandon Vincent, they're strapped down, they're ready to go, and they get off the line. It starts to rain way harder once the race actually starts, and it's really neck to neck. And we see them both come down the final stretch. Brandon Vincent hits the jump, Ryan Anderson comes down the straightaway. Ryan Anderson is going down the straightaway, and he hits a brick. He clips it with his back, I want to say back left tire. So he's coming down the straightaway, he clips a brick with his back left tire, it pops it, and he spins out and is shut off, because he would also slightly bump the wall and already have some truck breakage. Then we look at on the other side, Brandon Vincent overshot his jump, and he has to slam it in reverse to avoid hitting the wall and getting shut off, because almost both the drivers were shut off and both almost lost. But just, I guess, purely by luck, Ryan Anderson had completely crashed, and it did serve an opening for Brandon Vincent to win. So Ryan Anderson put on a great effort, but after getting to the finals, he could not win. So skills was supposed to be day one, but as talked about, Weather did not like that idea. So day two comes along, and now Monster Jam needs to basically improvise, right? Skills, freestyle, and high jump all in the same day. So high jump comes around, I think skills came around first, right? So we see all the drivers doing their things. Tyler Menningham gets a little bit of a wheelie save. Ultimately, Tom Meents would win skills with a front flip, I guess more of a reverse backflip off of a moonwalk that made it more of a front flip than just a reverse backflip. He would basically get a front flip, and it would ultimately be enough for him to win over Ryan Anderson. That didn't mean Ryan Anderson had any disappointment, though, because Ryan Anderson did a great job that night. That competition, I should say, because he did do a great job that night, which we'll get to a little bit later. So, it's skills. Ryan Anderson goes for his traditional sidewall. He goes over, does a little bit of, like, the truck tips are over, does a 180, so it's now on the opposite end of the truck, and that's when the trucks are typically shut off. But Ryan Anderson goes back for more without somehow being shut off, and does, in the end, accomplish the save. But ultimately, it wouldn't even get him a good score in skills because he didn't do a moonwalk, and I guess that's all the fans like scoring for. So it would not allow Ryan Anderson to get the opening he needed, ultimately, to get more up there, and unfortunately, it would result in him losing again. Then we come around to the high jump competition, which was supposed to be that day. Now Ryan Anderson is a completely different story because he's in all four competitions, which is a very hard thing to do. And there are only a couple other drivers who are able to, if even, such as Tom Meents and Maxi, who would be able to take home that skills win. But now it's come around to your high jump competition. And driver after driver, they're shooting up, landing hard, braking, rolling over, but still getting really, really high and higher, I believe, than we had seen in 2019. But Ryan Anderson comes up, launches from the starting area, shoots way up, hits the brakes, perfect timing to land perfectly square down back on the ramp without getting any breakage or crash, and yet still resulting in that high jump win. So Ryan Anderson would go home with a high jump win. The World Finals did not end there, however, because he would go to freestyle somehow, despite being in all the competitions, going through severe weather, going for a whole crash and bringing it back, and going the highest out of every truck in the field. He was perfectly fine for freestyle, and he would end up going for a great freestyle, but it was not enough to beat Tom Meents, because I guess Tom Meents won again and doubled down again. So Ryan Anderson ultimately would get third, which is still podium for freestyle. So that's Ryan Anderson's 2022 season wrapped up. He is still driving at most of the postseason stadium shows and getting some great runs thrown down at them. But it has been quite a hot minute since he drove, and I believe he will be in Australia next, before returning back to the U.S. for some shows in Texas and then wrapping up the year in Orlando. Then we look back to where his career started. I want to say 2009, maybe 2010. He really starts out his career. He drives Gravedigger one or two times, but mostly drives Monster Mutt. He's always driving Monster Mutt at these shows. And, it's always Monster Mutt, Monster Mutt, Monster Mutt. But after the 2010 season, he's riding some dirt bikes. I think that's actually coming into the 2011 season. He's riding some dirt bikes and stuff. And he ends up breaking his hand, and yeah, that takes him completely out of having any ability to actually being able to drive a monster truck. So now he's completely out of competition. And that was the year Son of a Digger was supposed to debut with him and Adam Anderson behind the wheel. Now, Adam Anderson would continue to drive Gravedigger, and Ryan Anderson would not be there for the season because his hand was broken. So, that being said, now we go into the 2011 World Finals 12, and it's a whole show, but Ryan Anderson's not there, and the encore comes around. We see some great encore, like a triple grinder freestyle, but the whole night is ultimately wrapped up with Ryan Anderson driving and debuting Son of a Digger, and he would do it great. He would get some great air, a little bit of saves, and he would wrap it up with a perfectly on the dot landed backflip, and that was when Ryan Anderson proved he was definitely ready to drive Monster Jam season, and he would actually right away be put on the Path of Destruction tour, going into 2012 and further, and win several competitions with those tours, and just throwing it down every single time, driving Son of a Digger, and just winning, and then, that goes on for a few years, without him winning anything. He goes from 2011, when he starts with Son of a Digger, and he goes all the way up until the end of 2015, and then from there, in that time, it was Ryan Anderson doing really good, but not getting any big titles to his name. And then comes around 2016. World Finals happens. He doesn't actually get any World Finals win, but this is the year that Ryan Anderson would heavily revolutionize Monster Jam and also mark a pretty good driver improvement. Probably the greatest driver improvement we have seen, because this was a completely different level of driving that we saw from Ryan Anderson. Every single run that he did in 2016 had some kind of save, barrel roll, whatever sidewall you could think of, whatever save on the front end, rear end, big combo save, biggest area of the year, backflips and double backflips, anything you could ask for, Ryan Anderson was doing it basically every weekend in 2016, but it was different in 2016 because he would be doing, a normal Ryan Anderson crazy 2016 freestyle, and he would clip a jammer, and the truck would get a little bit sideways, basically like a little bit of a bicycle. He slams on the brake, and it launches the truck onto the front left tire. He puts it in reverse a little bit with the steering as well, and it gets the truck perfectly balanced on the front two tires. So then, he takes his hand off the steering wheel, the truck is level on the front two tires, and he just holds it in reverse, and then he sets it back down, and, it's a big deal, because that, in 2016, would be the first moonwalk Monster Jam would see intentionally performed. And, it was said, he interviewed, and Dennis Anderson, he thought that was on accident. He didn't actually know that Ryan Anderson was trying to do that. So someone had asked him, did you see what Ryan Anderson did? And he's like, yeah, someone showed me that last night. And this other person says, no, he did that today. So it turns out, Ryan Anderson, it was no accident, as he would perfectly replicate the moonwalk, now it's named, that he had done the first night, and had an absolutely amazing freestyle again. And that was when drivers realized, other drivers, they could start doing this move too, and now the moonwalk is seen everywhere. But Ryan Anderson would not stop there with completely changing the sport and having the best runs. So 2017 comes along, and it's one of the most debatable but most insane World Finals. We see Gravedigger 35th anniversary, incredible encore, but before that encore could happen, we look at freestyle. Freestyle, Lee O'Donnell does the first front flip, Neil Elliott does the first reverse backflip and throws on a great run. Lee O'Donnell wins freestyle ultimately, which is a little bit of an argument that still goes on with fans today. And we look even farther before that with Friday night, I want to say, with racing, and Ryan Anderson would win racing at World Finals 18, and that would be the first big title Ryan Anderson could put to his name. After such an amazing 2016 season, it's no surprise that coming into the next year, he would end up winning a World Finals. But he did not stop there, because 2018 comes around, and it's one of the most debatable and weird World Finals that we've ever seen. I mean, truck after truck was crashing early, getting out before they were supposed to, and crashing in the weirdest ways, losing tires randomly, performing moves that were banned, like BJ Johnson. So you're just seeing, a very disappointing World Finals. And Ryan Anderson comes along for freestyle. Ryan Anderson can never disappoint with freestyle. And although I believe he had performed it once in 2017, a little bit more unintentionally, he wants to start another new move. So he lines up for the backflip ramp. Mid backflip, he shifts the truck back into reverse, and upon landing, he hits it on the brakes and throws it in reverse, and marks one of the first ever backflip to moonwalks that Monster Jam had seen performed. And now, that has now made a completely new criteria for freestyle. Ryan Anderson just did a brand new thing again, and the scores go wild. Ryan Anderson would continue to put great air, wheelies, small saves, and a crazy crash to end off the run. And all that put together with that new backflip to moonwalk, it would end up being enough for Ryan Anderson to take home the World Finals 19 freestyle win. And apart from that, no one really liked the 2018 World Finals except for maybe the Max D Encore. So you could really see where Ryan Anderson's career had come from and how he is still managing to dominate after about 12, 13 years of driving. And now it's time for the wrapping up, and not obviously completely instant wrap up, but this is where we just talk about, basically I just talk about whatever I want to with Monster Jam. And it does start to put a little bit of more fan involvement here, so put this up here. I don't think anyone's here currently, but that is still there when people do get here. So put any of your questions in chat if you have them, because that is what this wrapping up of the series each week is supposed to come down to. So, things I want to talk to is just random stuff. 2023, I'm very excited to see what those lineups will end up looking like. Personally, there's a few things I think should be touched on, like, maybe Monster Jam should consider going back to 3 stadium tours, because there are a lot of currently arena drivers that need to be on stadiums. To name a few, we have Tristan England, Brandon Vincent, who personally said that he is kind of, really, really wants to be in a stadium. We have Cody associated with Dragon, who used to be on stadium tours and got removed. Lindsay Reed with Monster Mode Dalmatian, who won a freestyle in a Stadium World Finals, clearly proving worthy for a stadium championship. And really, it did just kind of set up a kind of odd, I don't know, they're just having only 2 stadium tours really limits how many drivers can be in the stadiums. It's not like Brandon Vincent could just be moved into a tour, because he already drives Gravedigger. There's already Gravediggers in all the tours. So, I don't know. It's just very, very odd kind of what we've been seeing with the lineups. I don't know. There is some indie movement to stadiums though, like Dave Wolfert, which I'm most excited to be seeing, move to stadiums, but also just some odder things, like Travis Mowry started his career in a stadium tour, but then hasn't been put in a stadium setting since, except a couple post shows. I don't really understand that at all. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, it's just odd. We saw a lot of drivers in 2021 when they were at limit of drivers temporarily moved to stadiums, and they really proved that they should stay in stadiums, but Monster Jam won't put them in stadiums. So I don't know. I don't know what that's all about and why it's like kind of going that way. But yeah, they're just kind of putting everyone on arenas because they won't make more stadium tours or make bigger stadium tours, and I don't know why. It's really weird. They also could just be that not enough drivers. They could just not be getting enough drivers because there are loads of drivers, but new restrictions being added year by year, obviously they're going to lose quite a few drivers. Purely because of the fact, you know, drivers want to give really good runs, and you're shutting them off because, I don't know, something happened that would make it a really good run if they could have continued after it. So, yeah, it's just been a really interesting year for officials as well. One thing I've seen a few people talk about that I could completely agree on is unique tracks. It doesn't always mean there's a new track set up at every show. Obviously, no one thinks that's necessary. But what happened to cool track designs? Now it's just yellow and black, red and black, blue and black. These very basic tracks. And they used to have like flames and skulls and all these cool designs on the ramps that they just stopped doing. And I don't know why. Sure, stick to like a certain color or something. I don't know. Doesn't mean you have to make a new track setup completely. It just, I don't know why you have to make it like so where the track is identical at every show. It's obviously not exciting. Add some like designs or something like flames. Flames are very easy relatively compared to some other things and they used to do that all the time. I don't see why they stopped. So, yeah, I don't know. You could say that about a lot of things like officials because Monster Jam is now saying it's too dangerous or too expensive to let a run keep going with a broken tie rod. But then why wasn't that a problem before? Like, why wasn't broken tie rod an issue when they used to allow it? And now, all of a sudden, it is a big problem. It doesn't really make much sense. To me at least, I don't really see why they had done that. Because it does really set up a weird criteria that all the shows fall under, where like, it's kind of, I don't know. It's just weird. I don't think it's necessary to shut off trucks for things now that they weren't shut off before, because obviously it's not an issue if it was fine before. It's not like any like injuries have happened since then. Injuries did not happen in a few years that were bad, at least with Monster Jam specifically. So I've really seen no good reason that that's been happening recently, but it's happening now. So yeah, I don't know, just throwing out a couple opinions there, because that is usually what this section of these videos will be used for, basically. There are a couple other things that might be worth noting, like drivers that kind of suddenly retired. You know, Neil Elliott, obviously he's a veteran, but he never said anything about his retirement after he retired. He just kind of did. Same goes for Lindsey Wink, who I think he's been driving since like the early, like very, very early 2000s. So, I don't know. It's just really interesting to see drivers just retire and say nothing about it. They're just basically disappeared at that point. It's kind of weird, in my opinion. I just don't know why they do that. So, yeah, that is getting a little bit more to wrap up this. You know, it's been quite a fun stream. I will be doing these weekly, every week, and I will be putting out as much other videos as possible. Obviously, I don't want to restrict it to just this style of video, and that is going the next few weeks. I'm going to see loads and loads of monster trucks, so there will be lots of content for you guys, because Also, the last weekend of October, we are thinking about going to the All-Star Monster Truck Tour, which will be closing the Arizona State Fair, so it kind of goes hand in hand there. And yeah, just a lot of things to talk about there. So this is kind of your last chance to put any questions or thoughts that you have in chat. Otherwise, I will be ending this off very, very soon. So, yeah, yep. Alright, so thank you everyone for coming out to today's stream. It was a blast to talk about some things and make some updates for Monster Jam and get my schedule out there. Expect to see this most weeks of the year. And this will basically be my way to get my schedule, my plans, Monster Jam news, and things like that out there. So, yep, thank you everybody for coming out today, and that wraps up this stream.